You know, we've all been in conversations where we felt totally invisible, right? And then there are those other ones, the rare ones, where we felt truly, deeply understood. So what's the difference? Well, today, we're going to break down the art and science of making people feel seen, and we're going to do it by looking at the fascinating personal journey of the writer David Brooks. You gotta love this quote. It just perfectly sums up the world David Brooks comes from. He is a self-described intellectual, a product of the University of Chicago, a place he jokes is where fun goes to die. His entire life was spent in the world of big ideas, not necessarily the world of feelings. And that right there is the heart of our explainer today. See, this isn't just about a few social tips. It's about a fundamental shift in how we connect with each other, told through the story of a guy who had to learn it all from scratch. So, to really get the lesson, you first have to understand the man. Let's take a look at the background that made David Brooks such an unlikely champion for emotional connection. Okay, so picture this. Brooks says his family was, think Yiddish British, which basically means stiff upper lip, not a lot of emotion. From the age of 7, his identity was just writer, which is a pretty solitary job. Then he goes to the super intellectual University of Chicago, becomes the conservative columnist at the New York Times, a job he compared to being the chief rabbi at Mecca. I mean, every single step of his life just reinforced this idea of living completely inside his own head. But here's where things get interesting. Just as Brooks was starting his own personal journey to become more emotionally open, he noticed this really disturbing trend happening all around him. It was almost like society was heading in the exact opposite direction. This quote just nails the paradox he was seeing. His personal journey toward connection was happening at the exact same time as a societal journey toward disconnection. And let me tell you, the numbers that back this up are, well, they're staggering. 54%. Just let that sink in for a second. That means more than half of us feel like we're going through life without a single person who truly gets who we are. It's like this quiet epidemic of invisibility. And it's getting worse fast. The number of people who say they have zero close friends has quadrupled in just a couple of decades. I mean, just think about the social fabric that's unraveling with a statistic like that. So what's the result of all this growing isolation? Well, it's a 50% spike in the number of people who rate themselves in the lowest possible happiness category. As Brooks puts it, we're literally becoming a sadder and meaner society. So why? What's going on here? You could blame technology or sociology or the economy, but Brooks argues that the real cause is something much more fundamental. We've simply stopped teaching the basic social skills of how to be considerate, how to listen, and how to make people feel valued. And that brings us to the absolute core of his work. In any interaction we have, we can choose to be one of two types of people, and this, right here, is the crucial point. Brooks has a name for this. He calls it the apex skill. And it's exactly what it sounds like, the single most important social and moral skill we can possibly develop. It is the foundation for everything else. And this comparison just illustrates the two paths so brilliantly. Diminishers, they're not curious about you. They stereotype. They don't ask questions. You walk away feeling, well, small and unseen. But illuminators, they are totally different. They beam their attention on you. They ask great questions. They make you feel lit up, understood, and truly valued. There's this classic story about this. So a young woman in Victorian England has dinner with the Prime Minister at the time, William Gladstone. She leaves the dinner just completely dazzled, thinking he was the most brilliant, clever man she'd ever met in her life. A few weeks later, she dines with his great political rival, Benjamin Disraeli. But after that dinner, she left thinking that she was the cleverest person in England. See the difference? Gladstone was a diminisher. Disraeli was an illuminator. The goal is to be Disraeli. Okay, so how do we do it? How do we become illuminators? Brooks argues it's not some magic talent you're born with. It's a set of practical, totally learnable skills. He breaks it down into 3 simple stages. First step is the gaze. This is all about how you look at someone before a single word is even spoken. Do your eyes say you're a person, or do they say you're an object? Second is accompaniment. This is about being other-centered, sort of like how a pianist accompanies a singer. And third, the most important part, conversation. All right, being a good conversationalist is a skill. You want to be a loud listener, give those little affirmations like amen, yes, preach. Don't be afraid of the pause. Just let the other person finish their thought completely before you jump in. And whatever you do, don't be a topper.
Oh man, this is such a common mistake. We've all seen it. Someone says they had a horrible flight, stuck on the tarmac for 2 hours. The topper immediately jumps in with, oh, that's nothing. I was stuck for 6 hours. Now, it might seem like you're relating, but what you're really doing is trying to shift the attention back to yourself. The relator, on the other hand, keeps the focus right where it belongs, on the other person.
And finally, this might be the biggest game changer of all. The quality of your connection depends entirely on the quality of your questions. So don't just ask someone what they believe. Ask them how they came to believe it. Ask those big picture questions that make them really reflect on their own lives. A friend of Brooke's once asked an interviewer, "What would you do if you weren't afraid?" And she just started crying. That's the power of a really great question.
This quote from a rabbi, it just perfectly defines what empathy really is. There was a woman in his congregation who would sometimes fall to the ground. And he said people always rushed to try and lift her up because her being on the ground made them uncomfortable. But what she actually needed wasn't a solution. She needed someone to get down on the floor with her, to share her space. That right there is what it means to truly see someone.
So, why does all of this matter so much, especially right now? Well, in an age of so much distrust and division, these skills aren't just, nice to have. They're a form of rebellion. Brooks was really inspired by this James Baldwin quote. Even after being treated so horribly by society, Baldwin recognized that every single person we see, the wonderful and the monstrous, is a potential version of ourselves. That deep understanding, that shared humanity, is what Brooks calls defiant humanism. It's choosing to lead with curiosity and trust, even when it feels totally naive. And that brings us to the final question, one that Brooks learned from an author named Peter Block. And it's a question for you. What is the gift you currently hold in exile? What talent, what beautiful part of yourself are you just not using? Maybe for a lot of us, it's that simple, powerful, and defiant gift of making another person feel truly seen.